Hello, BitsGet fam. Welcome to our live stream today. My name is CH and I will be your host. We got a great one coming at you. Of course, unfortunately, a massive bloodbath, but as we're expecting, of course, in crypto, part of the game. But we have invited some top minds in the industry to come and share with us some much needed insights. Of course, we do have Mr. Hasib Qureshi, the general partner or managing partner at Dragonfly Capital. Hasib, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing okay, all things considered. Thanks for having me, CH.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. And of course, we have our very own Gracie Chen, the CEO of BitsGet. Gracie, how are you today?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks. And I'm wearing Bitcoin earring today just to stand with Bitcoin today.
Well, we all stand with Bitcoin on a day like this, so
We
glad to see
always
that.
we always do.
Love that. Love that. Thank you so much both to you both for taking the time. Now, before we begin, everyone watching here, if you're watching from X, please help us hit that repost button. We want to get as many people to come and join in on the fun. All right. With that out of the way, let's get started. Of course, we've experienced some crazy volatility to the downsides today, various factors, but I wanted to ask you guys, like, how are you guys, thinking about the markets? What are you most bullish on? Maybe Hasib, you can start us off.
Yeah, so it's very clear that right now macro is in the driver's seat, and it's not just crypto, it's really everything that is responding to what's going on, essentially with the Trump tariffs. So going into this year, we actually had a very bullish setup with respect to inflation coming down, very strong economy, a lot of good things going on in the world. And Trump is very chaotic. It's very difficult for markets to predict where he's going. And it's also the first, it's still only been a month and a half into his administration. So this is also the period where markets are still getting used to what is this guy about? What is he actually going to do? How does he communicate? Because markets really don't like uncertainty. So when there's a lot of changes happening quickly, as we see right now, especially within the first 90 days of a new administration, it's very common to see a lot of things happening quickly. And markets, generally speaking, they like to stay in safe assets until they know exactly what's going to happen. So my guess will be that by the summer, we'll probably have a better idea of what Trump is about. And a lot of his big changeovers from the Biden administration will already be done by then. And once that volatility dies down and people can kind of say, oh, okay, here's what he's doing with tariffs, here's what he's doing with foreign policy, here's what he's doing with the laws that he wants to overturn domestically, the volatility in that sense will come down. And that should make markets more comfortable with risk assets. So that's my expectation, all things equal. Obviously, it's surprising if you look at the fundamentals of crypto. Fundamentals of crypto have never been better. If you look at the total TVL that's on chain, you look at the stablecoin demand, you look at all of the regulatory morass that crypto's been stuck in for the last few years, all getting basically cleared up in just the last month and a half. Things could not be more positive from a long-term technology trajectory than much more so than I imagined even at the end of last year. The big difference is not crypto, it's everything else. It's macro, it's risk assets, it's the whole broader constellation going on around what we're doing. So I still actually feel very bullish about crypto. But one thing that you learn, especially having been through, if you were around in 21, 22, 23, what you saw was that, yeah, there was some, obviously crypto itself had some problems, but a lot of what was going on was just macro. When interest rates go up, interest rates go down, all this other volatility that goes on in broader markets affects crypto because we're now big enough that we're part of this broader world. It used to be that back in 2016, 2015, crypto was so small that nothing happening in the rest of the world mattered. But now crypto kind of is the rest of the world. So as a result, yeah, we go up and down alongside everything else. But I do expect that once things stabilize, which they eventually will, that crypto is going to be set up for a very positive trajectory this year.
That would be great. That's a great take. Thank you so much for that. Gracie, what are your thoughts here?
I agree that this year is crucial, and right now we are facing or experiencing short-term volatilities. So for the past weekend, some of the things that happened drive the Bitcoin price and all the cryptocurrency price up and downs are number one, geopolitical tension and some risk of sentiment, and then Trump's tariff threats, and the market reactions. For example, he placed 40% tariff on China now, which is pretty high. crazy, yeah. 20 more, right? Isn't like previously
No,
had
no,
20%?
10 more. So previously he had 10, he's adding 10 more.
Okay, 20 is fine. But if it were 40 that I
I mean,
thought, that
it's still a lot.
really,
20 is a lot from where it was before.
it is a lot, yeah, yeah. And then the uncertainty on Trump's delivery on his crypto promise, although over the weekend he mentioned that the strategic reserve will include lots of altcoins, including ADA, XRP, etc. But still, it's uncertain whether this promise will be really delivered. So these are the negative influences. And then looking at the positive side, SEC dropped the the charges for Coinbase and Uniswap, and there are more ETFs applications going on from Grayscale, from BWise, from some Solana ETF, some Litecoin ETF registered, things like that. I mean, very much agree with Hasib that it's all these things happening on the macroeconomic level or on the regulation, especially regulations from the US kind of aspect that's driving the crypto industry. It's no more a small Web3 world. And for the past, for this current cycle, we really see that Bitcoin, the inflow and outflow is driven or shifting from previously retail users to institutional users, and even now to the national level of influence that's happening to the industry.
Yes, absolutely right. And you brought up there the strategic reserve. Of course, just yesterday we saw Trump announce that, which will encompass various crypto assets, including BTC, ETH, XRP, Solana, and Cardano. And so I wanted to ask, maybe you can elaborate. What are your thoughts on this? What are you looking out for? Hasib, let's hear your thoughts.
So it's obviously a little bit crazy for him to be announcing this, especially on a Sunday. It was very strange timing in general to be announcing something that's so specific. The thing about the announcement, which is part of the reason why it really confused markets, obviously it was very exciting because everyone was like, oh, is he actually going to do it? Is he not going to do it? He's now made very clear that this is part of his intention to get this strategic Bitcoin reserve or strategic crypto reserve up and running. And there were some rumors before that he's going to include other assets that are American-made crypto assets. And so presumably that's why we see XRP, Cardano, and Solana in that set. Now, the weird thing is that it's pretty clear he can't actually do this unilaterally, right? So in a constitutional democracy like we have in the US, in order to spend money, you have to get approval from Congress. And Congress, if you haven't noticed right now, is in the mood of cutting spending, not adding more spending. So they would have to go out because they don't have Cardano, they don't have Solana, they have Bitcoin because the government is always seizing Bitcoin from just normal criminal seizures. And so they have, I believe, some number like $20 billion or something of Bitcoin that's already on the balance sheet. And they could just decide to freeze that Bitcoin, not auction it off, which is what usually happens when they seize money from the treasury, and say, great, that's the strategic Bitcoin reserve. But if you want to do that with Sol or you want to do that with Cardano, then you have to go buy some. And the only way they can buy some is by asking Congress. And we don't know that Congress is going to support this. This is just something that Trump just decided. He just tweeted this on a Sunday, so very unlikely that he got everybody around, got a deal together in Congress. So nobody really believes that has already happened. So politically, he hasn't yet put the pieces together to guarantee that this will take place. It may well be that people in Congress are supportive of a Bitcoin reserve. And he doesn't need them to be supportive of Bitcoin reserve. He can do it himself. But maybe they'll say, okay, Ethereum, okay, I'm fine with Ethereum. Ethereum seems fine. But they may say, no, you know what? I don't like XRP. Aren't we suing them? Or, I don't like Cardano. I've never heard of it. Or, Solana, is there enough liquidity? So we really don't know. If I had to guess, if you ran a market on what's most likely to be in this reserve when it's all said and done, Bitcoin, definitely yes, will be in there. Ethereum, probably. The other assets, I think there's a very good chance that politics starts to rear its ugly head and there ends up being a fight over what actually goes into that basket. Now, all that being said, yesterday what you saw was markets rallied hugely on the back of this proposal that there's going to be a strategic Bitcoin reserve. You saw Cardano was up like 70%, XRP was up 30 to 40%, Bitcoin and Ether were up massively as well. But then all those gains completely reversed today. largely because of the tariffs and the macro instability. So it's a crazy market you see right now, and part of it is that people don't know how much credibility to give Trump. He's flip flopping already on tariffs. The Zelensky deal, the Ukraine stuff. Everything is just so chaotic that markets don't have the ability to just trust what he's saying. I think it's very clear that it's going to happen for Bitcoin, but for everything else, we really don't know yet what to expect.
Yes, absolutely right. I feel like as a crypto investor, it's like that Anchorman meme of like, I'm in a glass cage of emotions. It's just such a roller coaster.
That's right.
It's been a crazy 48 hours. Gracie, what are your thoughts here? Oh, Gracie, can you hear us?
Gracie looks stone-faced.
I think we lost Gracie here. No worries. Well, I'm sure we'll get her back very soon. But maybe Haseeb. Yeah, right. Exactly. But maybe Haseeb, maybe you can kick us off with our next thoughts here. Of course, Trump has been rocking the market, like you said, a lot of volatility to the downside, as we saw today with the threats of the tariffs and many other measures. Now we saw that Arthur Hayes. He said that Bitcoin was potentially going to drop to 70K. Just like you said, investors, they're seeing that Trump really isn't fulfilling his crypto promises. So two-part question here is, one, do you think we will go to those levels? And also two, like, what do you think will get us back to over 100K?
So, okay, first and foremost, I would dispute the thing that you said that I think also Gracie alluded to, that Trump is not fulfilling his promises on crypto. I think he very clearly is. If you look at the picks he's made for all the administrations, whether SEC, FinCEN, Treasury, which controls FinCEN, David Sachs is the crypto czar, and just all everything that we've seen from the regulatory side so far, he actually has basically done everything he said he was going to do. Obviously the crypto reserve is the last element, but he's now signaled very clearly that he's going to do it, which is a big step forward from what was in the executive order that he signed, the first, I think it was several days after he came into office, which just said, we're going to research what will go into potentially doing a crypto reserve. Now he said very clearly, I'm going to do it. So I actually think Trump has been, whatever else you might criticize him for, which, to be clear, he deserves plenty of criticism. This is not one of them. He's been very, very clear in doing whatever it is he said he was going to do with respect to buoying crypto. Now, what is going to happen to the Bitcoin price or the crypto prices really is saying what's going to happen on macro. And, my honest answer is that I've seen people predicting, if you look at what Standard Charter has been saying, Standard Charter was predicting that Bitcoin's going to go to 200K, 300K. They wrote an article yesterday saying, oh, now 500K is in play. At the same time, you've got Arthur Hayes. I mean, look, I love Arthur. I think he's amazing. But if you just go back and look at his history of price calls on Bitcoin, basically every blog post has some other, it's going to hit 150, it's going to do this, it's going to do that. The reality is that we don't know. Nobody knows, because it's very difficult to predict what Trump is doing. If you know where the Bitcoin price is going in 2 weeks or in a month or whatever, you can make unlimited amounts of money. You don't even need to do it in crypto market because everything at this point is correlated. So nobody knows. That's why markets are so chaotic and why they're whipsawing so much. I think there's times when you're able to read the animal spirits of what's going on within the markets, but it's also pretty clear that despite the fact that macro has been so bad, you see altcoins really just getting jammed up. A lot of things are down, 40, 50, 60% since the election, which is crazy given that, where we were in the Biden administration, when the Biden administration was actively fighting crypto. And the Trump administration is opening the front door and saying, hey, welcome, we're open for business, like come back to America and build your coin here. Clearly, this is better fundamentals than where we were 6 months ago. It's hard to imagine any other interpretation of what's going on, but macro is macro, and you can't fight the beast. So the way I see it, I do think crypto is going to do well as markets stabilize and Trump eventually gets his footing and markets get their footing with respect to what's going on in crypto. I don't really think it takes a lot, and the reality is that for Bitcoin, Bitcoin has held up impressively well, given how much everything else is hurting. I mean, look at how much Nvidia, which is, at this point, Nvidia is bigger than Bitcoin. Nvidia has lost 25, 26% of its market cap, something like that. Look at what happened to Tesla. Tesla has been down massively, I think over 50%. And at the same time, you look at Bitcoin's down, less than 20. So Bitcoin's actually held up very well. And the degree of confidence that you see in this market that, yes, we're going to get through this, the amount of bid that you see for Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a flight to safety asset within crypto. So even though people, yes, they're selling alts, they're moving it into Bitcoin and holding strong because they know that ultimately this is going to be a very good year for crypto. And that's why it's an asset you want to hold.
And so actually, Steve, I wanted to just going off, you're talking about macro there. I know a leading figure like Raoul Pal has said that macro, maybe it's bad now, but it's going to shape up to be very, very good. We have potentially quantitative easing coming up. You have the business cycle that's going to maybe peak a little later, which of course will pull the entire crypto and the risk asset prices up. Wanted to ask, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like kind of the macro outlook, because of course we all know crypto is macro. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that real quick.
Sure.
Before
So
we move on.
first and foremost, I'm a VC. I'm not a macro guy, right? I might play one on TV, but don't trade on my advice. And this is not financial advice in any sense of that word. That being said, I think we have no idea if and when there's going to be quantitative easing. Right now, there's clearly quantitative tightening, and that will end at some point. But switching to easing really probably implies that there will be some kind of financial crisis. It's possible there is. In fact, I think Trump, in a way, is kind of pushing the U.S. economy closer and closer to the point where something might break. And if something breaks, it's actually very likely that the Fed will step in and we'll see some kind of quantitative easing or a rapid drop in rates. If that happens, ironically, it's actually very good for crypto. It's good for risk assets generally if we see some kind of quantitative easing situation or some kind of calamity take place that forces the Fed to act. But the worst thing is sort of financial stress that's not so bad that it creates a crisis, right? So like the medium amount of stress is bad. Tons of stress, actually risk assets will go crazy because it's like COVID, right? Why did all the assets go up in COVID? It's because rates dropped to zero and quantitative easing started. So even though the economy was in a shithole, everything else was actually really great when it comes to financial assets. So it's possible that could happen, but Trump has to really push even harder than he's pushing now in order for something like that to take place. That being said, I think the most likely base case is that Trump doesn't really Trump's not an economist, right? Everybody in his administration understands that these tariffs are stupid. These are bad for America. They're hurting the economy. They're hurting the stock market. They're hurting inflation. That's why the Fed is backing off when previously it said it was going to cut, 3 potential rate cuts. Now it's saying like, oh no, maybe inflation's going to come back. And so all of this stuff is really counterproductive to Trump. And Trump, at the end of the day, he's a capitalist. He cares about his own net worth. He cares about his own earnings and his own, he's very invested in the economy. He owns a lot of stocks. He owns a lot of real estate. And all those things are going to do better if the economy is strong and interest rates are low. So I think at the end of the day, the most likely thing in my mind, and again, not financial advice, not predicting anything you should be trading on, is that Trump will eventually realize that this stuff is not working. And when he realizes it's not working, he's going to back off. He's going to find some way to de-escalate and say, oh, yes, we got them to give us this and give us that. The tariffs will come back down. Economy will pump again. And he'll say, great, look what I did. I saved the economy. I'm such a great president. Because at the end of the day, that's what he thrives on. He needs a win, and he needs to prove that he's the smartest guy in the room, and that's going to be his way to do it.
Absolutely right. And we can't forget that the most material part of his wealth is now in this meme coin that he has. So he's very much aligned with the crypto market, right?
Absolutely.
So I would hope he's going to pump our bags. Oh, excuse me. But I do wanted to bring back Gracie. We wanted to ask you, maybe go back to our previous question on the strategic reserve, because of course there's many crypto assets that are part of that. I wanted to ask your thoughts on that.
Sure. Sorry, I lost connection a bit. Glad to be back. So for strategic reserve, another thing I heard, this is more like, hearings on the street, is that because there are big donors to Trump's election from some of those projects leaders. So it's kind of like they're very strong interest and lots of like push there to make their tokens in this bucket of the strategic reserve. And that's why it's not strategic Bitcoin reserve anymore. It's strategic crypto reserve. And it had lots of bigger blue chip tokens. And speaking of that, well, this whole strategic crypto reserve actually, if it's, I'm pretty sure that there will be more clarity on the scope and the impact on in the White House Crypto Summit in 7th of March. By the way, Hasiba, will you be there?
I will not, unfortunately.
No, okay. But I'm sure lots of VC, GPs, and groups like Web3 group CEOs will be there. And basically, if it's like very confirmed, of course there will be institutional adoption boosted. There will be more market confidence, and the regulatory pushback and political uncertainty kind of decrease a little bit. And that will help, of course, position the US as a crypto leader. But back to who Donald Trump is and this administration is about, I think down the heart, Trump is still a business person than just a politician, and his goal here, this is the start of his administration. Sorry, his 4-year cycle. If there has to be a recession happened in this 4 years, it better happen now rather than later, right? Because if it's now, it's like the previous administration's issue, and he needs to solve lots of economic problems, cut the war spendings in Middle East and in Russia, Ukraine, and use Doge as a not Dogecoin Doge, but the organization Doge, to find lots of efficiency saving areas in the government. I think these are all parts of him being not just a politician, but also a business person, which is quite interesting to see. And echo with Hasib that Donald Trump and the whole administration is totally a very unexpected team. You just can't really predict what they have to say and what they have in mind. But there are things that we can predict, or that's more certain. For example, the current interest rate is too high to maintain. It has to go down in any way or any time. It's just like when it's going to happen. And also, Bitcoin remains a very key dollar risky asset. Its Sharpe ratio is higher than, on average, the Mega 7 stocks, including Apple, Meta, Alphabet, etc. Maybe NVIDIA has a higher Sharpe ratio. With that said, Bitcoin is still a very important dollar asset that all the institutions are looking into for investment, and that's my opinion on strategic reserve and maybe Bitcoin in general.
Thank you for that, Gracie. And so I wanted to ask, do you think there's a lot more downside from here? Of course, we have like Arthur Hayes predicting that could be going to 70K. I want to ask, first of all, do you think there's further downside, but also what do you think it'll take to get back to over 100K again?
If you were to ask me, I actually do have some limit order placed slightly higher than 70K, maybe 75-ish. So I'm expecting Bitcoin to drop to that price level so that I can buy more Bitcoin. And when Arthur Hayes said 70K, I don't think he just means 70K. It's probably like the range of 70 to 80. And we saw 78K over the weekend, like Friday-ish our time, right? And of course, like Trump's tariff threats are pressuring the crypto market, and more macro uncertainty is also possible. And if we see like there were lots of recent sell-offs, especially from the ETFs and bigger institutions, that's driving the market downturn. I'm never a technical investment person. I'm more of a fundamental. But I was told by my our research, who are more of an expert on technical levels, that right now we do need to see a technical breakout above maybe 98K in order for Bitcoin to climb back to 100K. And that could come from, the White House Crypto Summit, the Fed policy hints on, is that 18th March? So March, like 7th of March, the summit, 18th of March, the Fed policy, or more East tariff fears. These are the key things that can bring Bitcoin back to a higher level, above 100K. Not sure if Hasib have anything to add on there.
No, we were speaking of it while you were while you were down and out, but I more or less agree. I find it more difficult to guess where these things are going because macro is so unpredictable right now. It really just depends on how long Trump is going to keep fighting with Canada and Mexico and China. But I think eventually things have to stabilize because they just always do. This is the early period of the Trump administration. He's still figuring out what he can and can't get away with because this is his first time doing this, right? Although he put some tariffs on China in his first administration, they were actually very, very small compared to the tariffs that we have today. And he didn't do anything like this with Canada and Mexico. So really, Trump is kind of learning in real time. I don't think he really knows what's going to happen. I think he's just kind of trying things. He has an intuition about what's going to happen, but I don't think he expected markets to have this kind of reaction. So you can see that he's calibrating as things are happening, and I think he's going to continue doing that.
Yes, absolutely. And Gracie, you mentioned earlier that the SEC have dropped numerous cases against many crypto companies. I wanted to ask you guys, like, what are you seeing on the regulatory front that's going to help perhaps propel the crypto markets and the adoption? Maybe Gracie, you can start us off on this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, over the weekend, we saw that the SEC dropped more cases, especially, I think, is it today, like this afternoon or this morning? Like they dropped the cases towards Kraken, and of course earlier Coinbase. This all indicates that there should be a more accommodative regulatory environment, which is which is pretty much like expected when Donald Trump became the new, like doing the re-election in November, and in terms of the impact, it also means adoption. More regulatory shift will boost especially investor and institutional investors' confidence. Remember, Hasib, we were in Bali during a conference where there were an institutional, like a huge institution companies China had, like mentioned, some of the reasons that prevented him or their institution to invest more into crypto are three reasons: regulatory risks, reputational risks, and then he didn't see enough innovation happening in our industry, which I think what's happening potentially, all these like case dropping is actually trying to solve some of those hurdles, especially around regulational risk and reputational risk. Yeah, so these like dismissal of cases against Coinbase, Uniswap, Kraken, alongside the formation of the crypto task force under a more crypto proactive Trump administration, I think that signals a shift from the enforcement, like SEC find this, find that, suing this, suing that, to a more like a clearer regulatory frameworks, and that should boost investor confidence and market growth in general.
Absolutely, thank you for that. Hasib, what are your thoughts?
Completely agree with the points that Gracie just made. The only thing I'd add is that one thing it's easy to underestimate is a lot of companies that wanted to integrate crypto were too afraid to do so over the previous administration. If you remember, the Libra, which not the latest Libra, not the Javier Milei Libra, but the Facebook Libra. This was years ago now. Most people who came into crypto recently may not even remember this, but the Libra was kind of a demonstration to every other company that if you get too close to crypto, you're going to get in trouble. Don't touch this. Stay far away from this as you can if you value your core business. And a lot of companies really listened. They really took that lesson and said, okay, I'm not going to touch this stuff. It's way too dangerous. It's way too risky. And therefore, it became very difficult for consumers to get access to a lot of these products because, if you think about, Google or Apple or any of these services, they got the message. Don't touch any of this. Don't integrate any of this. All of that now is changing, right? If you look back to the last couple of years, what have we seen? We saw BlackRock. This only 6 months after FTX collapsed that BlackRock announced that it was going to launch Bitcoin and eventually Ethereum ETFs, which is crazy. It was so risky for them to do at that time. And in many ways, they deserve all the success they've had with the Bitcoin ETF. You add to that, PayPal coming into the space, launching a stablecoin at the beginning of 23. The beginning of 24. You saw Stripe with the acquisition of Bridge start getting into the stablecoin business. And all of that was before Trump got elected, before any of these cases got dropped. Now, what you should see is basically the floodgates are open. Any company, any consumer product is now free to be able to integrate crypto. And I think what you'll see is a huge amount of distribution channels that are going to start opening up because people realize how much money is getting made in this space. There's all these news reporting about, look at Tether. Tether made, more than $10 billion. They made more profit than BlackRock. Every financial institution in the world is looking at that and saying, how do I get a piece of that industry? That is so incredible, the amount of money that's being made and the amount of users getting onboarded. And all of that is going to accelerate everything. And this is, again, all of this just happened in the last few weeks, right? Even the Coinbase case getting dropped, that was just 2 weeks ago? And, over the weekend, we've had Uniswap had their investigation dropped. Consensus had their case dropped. Same thing with Kraken that we saw this morning. Pretty much across the board, the SEC has made very, very clear, and the entire administration has made clear, crypto is good, and we want people to be able to use it in America. That is such a huge sea change that I can't imagine that in 3 to 4 years, that's not going to be one of the biggest changes that we'll be talking about in retrospect.
Yes, absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. And of course, the crypto ETF was a big catalyst for all this adoption. So I wanted to ask you guys, do you think we'll see more crypto ETFs being approved this year? And if so, which ones do you think are most likely? Maybe Hasib, I'll kick this back to you.
Yeah, so it's going to take a little bit of time to get new ETFs because we still need futures markets to probably come first before we get the ETFs. So if you look at the pattern with Bitcoin and Ethereum, when you do the application to the SEC, you demonstrate that the market is robust by showing a regulated futures market. My guess will be that we need to see the futures get listed first. We don't have Solana futures yet. We don't have XRP futures yet. We don't have Litecoin futures yet. So we need to see some of these assets, even if they're guaranteed to not be securities. That's actually not enough to get an ETF listed. There are a lot of assets that are not securities, but there's no ETF that gets approved by the SEC. So once we see the assets actually get approved as futures, have a little bit of trading history, then the next stage is to ETF it and to get a spot ETF. My guess would be that Solana would probably be the first thing that gets an ETF. The XRP case, if you recall, the XRP case has not actually been dropped yet. They're still litigating the XRP case. So it's very likely that there will be some kind of settlement. If you just look at what the SEC has been doing, we'll probably see that relatively soon. But that case is very, very far along compared to almost everything else, which is, I think most of the other things are still, in discovery. So because the XRP case is so far along, that's probably going to take more time. So my guess is that XRP will be later if it gets an ETF. So I would guess that probably a Solana ETF, maybe something like we get something in the summer to get futures listed by summer, and then maybe by fall or later, maybe early winter, we get the actual Solana ETF. That'd be my guess, but I'm not an expert, so I'm kind of shooting from the hip.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be very, very exciting. Gracie, what are your thoughts?
I would want to add 2 more coins, which are Litecoin and Doge. I think according to Bloomberg, because there is more, it's more of a Bitcoin similar structure. I mean, Litecoin, and it has also filings from Grayscale and some other ETF issuers. So according to Bloomberg, there is a 90% chance of approval of Litecoin. And, Doge is the largest meme coin. Elon Musk was a big fan. Hopefully he's still a fan by naming the efficiency organization Doge. I think Doge also have a decent prospects in terms of the ETF approval. But of course, Solana, XRP are two good guesses. I actually did an interview with CNBC last year, and I said in that interview that I think the ETF's approval wouldn't be as smooth as people thought. And one of the arguments was, like Hasib said, there should be futures ETF before the spot ETF's approval. At least that's what happened to Bitcoin and Ethereum. I still think that's true, which I agree with Hasib on that point. It's indeed like this whole recall we mentioned earlier that this administration is quite unpredictable. Right now, I think maybe time-wise everything should be shorter, and it will move faster, and there could be unexpected ETFs approved. But these four other than Bitcoin, Ethereum will be Solana, Litecoin, XRP, Doge, are some of the strongest contestants.
All right, for sure. Appreciate you sharing that. So I wanted to ask you guys, how are you positioning yourself amid all this crazy volatility? Hasib, let's start with you.
I mean, so we're venture capitalists, which basically means that we're long all the time. I generally speaking, I don't trade very actively. For the most part, I'm buy and hold, and that's true both for us as a fund as well as for myself personally. So I think at the end of the day, you just have to look at fundamentals, right? Because macro, I don't think a lot of people have alpha in trading macro unless you're a macro investor. So my view, very simply, is that I understand the fundamentals of crypto. That's where I do think I have alpha, and the fundamentals of crypto, to my mind, are extremely strong. So I think from my perspective, at least for my own money, I'm holding, and I'm going to continue to do so as long as I'm bullish on the space, which is likely to be for quite a while.
Love that. And Gracie?
For me, like I said earlier, that I have some USDT parked. I do have more than half of my crypto portfolio in Bitcoin, and then maybe 10-20% in some altcoins, and the others in USDT parked there for more purchase opportunities. I don't think the bull cycle is ended, as some people thought of the weekend, especially when Bitcoin dropped to 78 or 80K. People start to panic, right? Is this the dark hour? I think it's more like a short drop, and there is a second bump due to the more crypto-friendly news coming up, and the more macroeconomic factors such as the interest rate cut, quantitative easing, etc. And how do I position myself in this volatility? Well, I think there are certain principles that always hold, which are pretty simple and naive, but think about that. Those are probably the real principle or truth, which is always diversification, and always do enough research before you start to invest in anything. Risk management, for example, when I place trades, I do have a stop loss and stop gain orders, and try to limit my exposure to very high volatile assets. I also have a very simple principle that I shared in the previous interview, which is that I only want to hold assets that can allow me to sleep soundly at night. That I can, I feel comfortable holding that asset, rather than being very worried about whether I get a margin call, or this meme coin can go to zero immediately. Things like that are not part of my long-term portfolio. I do some interesting trades to get a sense of what's happening in the market and what tokens to list at Biget, etc. So I do some small amount trading activities over altcoins, including meme coins, but it's very, very small amount, and I did lose some money over there. There were Trump token that I bought, and I had a 3 times of gain, and then I suddenly lost those gain in the next token, which is a millennial that I bought. Things like that happen, but for me, it's more like experiment, and get a sense of what's happening in the market.
Yeah, love
For
that.
the larger portion, diversify, stay informed, risk management. Simple.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely. You can't go wrong with that. So I wanted to ask you guys, like, what's your outlook on the crypto market, let's say in the short term and the rest of 2025? Let's hear from you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've already basically laid it out. Is that in the short term, I think you're really just watching what Trump does. I don't think it's really endogenous to crypto at this point. It's everything is moving together, whether it's looking at what's happening in the bond market, whether it's looking at commodities, or whether it's looking at the stock market and crypto. Everything is responding to the same forces, which is basically what's happening with geopolitics. So in the short term, you're buckle in. You're in for a ride. I think for the rest of this year, I'm fundamentally bullish. I think once things stabilize, both geopolitically and with respect to macroeconomics and interest rates, I think that's when you're going to see crypto fundamentals start to catch up and say, oh, okay, the space is really growing for real. The adoption is there. Stablecoins are growing. All these things are really positive. I think that's going to be a great setup for crypto going into the end of the year.
Love that. Thank you for the outlook. Gracie, your thoughts?
Yeah, similarly. So short term, we may face very strong volatility, and I'm cautiously optimistic. So again, the positive areas we're looking at are regulatory progress and ETF developments, while the negative or the risks that we are observing is geopolitical risks. For example, U.S. start a war with Mexico. I don't know. And then macroeconomic pressures such as the Fed rate decisions, the policy announcements, these are all risks. And then the rest of 2025, maybe, if we look at end of the year, September to December, more of a bullish trend. If we in Chinese, there's a saying called 刻舟求剑. Like if you have a bow there and you just put a ruler and try to find the pattern, and if we just put all the Bitcoin cycle for the past three or four cycles together with this one, seems that end of the year is gonna be more of the highest point of the summit, basically the summit of this cycle. So according to that, Bitcoin can potentially hit, I think, at least 150K, or maybe even aiming for 180K, or even 200. And then the altcoins, we mentioned some of the ETF approval, like Solana, Litecoin, they may surge if there is an ETF approval. But if you look at Ethereum, I mean, it could be, still like pretty flat, right? Depends on what happened in that ecosystem, especially given that Solana right now is facing lots of controversial comments and user experience around meme coin, and they are also pivoting to more TradFi and PayFi and RWA rather than just supporting meme coins. But like this whole year, regulations, policies, the economic downturns, and interest rate cuts, QEs are the major factors driving the upcoming bull. I mean, for me, second pump.
Yeah, for sure. I really enjoy seeing all the Ethereum stablecoin memes out there because of how stable ETH was. Yeah, thank you for that. I do have one last question for you too. If you had to distill your expertise down to a single nugget of wisdom that you can share with our audience today, what would that be? Hasib, let's hear from you.
Single nugget of wisdom, probably be to zoom out. Like when you're looking at what's going on, it's like, oh, this weekend, we thought it was a pump, and now the thing's coming down, and all this up and down, and what's happening? Is it over? Is the cycle dead? Like if you zoom out and you just look at what this industry has accomplished and how big it's gotten over the last few years, and just looking at everything that we wanted as an industry, just imagine a couple of years ago was FTX collapsing. We're now at a place where crypto is basically baked into the bread. The country that had the most crazy backlash against crypto, which is the United States, has completely 180'd on its position on the space. More and more people are now being ushered into the on-chain economy. And Bitcoin, just as of 2 months ago, hit an all-time high. I think if you ignore the stuff that's happening locally with respect to macro and the geopolitical instability, and you just look at how much crypto has grown and where if you draw the line out of where it's going in the future, it makes it just really, really clear that, as Gracie was mentioning, if you look across what the 12-year cycles that we've seen in crypto, there's only one thing that you should be feeling, which is optimistic.
Love that. Gracie, your thoughts?
For me, it's creating value. I guess industrial leaders and players like me and Hasib, although we buy, hold, and sell, different cryptocurrencies, our day-to-day work on every day is still focused on our own business and try to create value there. As an exchange, we create value by being a good platform, top user experience, providing good quality tokens and provide many choices there for users to trade and try to find, safer assets for our earning users to have a decent earning, but maintain safety is the key. That's how we create value. And then for Hasib, I know Dragonfly has always been really working really hard to provide value for their portfolio companies, because we are one of their portfolio companies and we know that. And also trying to search the good quality projects and top-notch quality projects who still exist after this cycle, right? In the next cycle, and try to be the leader in that sector. That's how they create value. So I guess as individuals in this space, focus on how we can create value. And as an industry, also wish that we can create more value. Like, for example, looking at AI, ChatGPT, DeepSeek, they are revolutionizing everyone's daily life. We all use these AI tools every day. But in blockchain, like I see strong cases in PayFi, in exchanges, maybe in some of the public chains. But I don't see enough innovations happening in, for example, AI plus crypto or GameFi, Depend. Like these are some of the areas that we had high expectation, but I don't see enough value created. So hopefully, individuals as a company, as an industry, together we create more values.
Absolutely right. Thank you so much for that. And if I may, maybe one last thing that I can add is I think it'd be always good to think in incentives, right? As Charlie Munger said, show me the incentive and I'll show the outcome. And now we have Trump, we have BlackRock, all of these big players, they have incentive to really let crypto blow up further. So that also really keeps me intact. And I just think long term, I think if you have those kind of mindsets, it's really hard to lose, as of course, both of our guest speakers here have alluded to today. All right, guys. Well, that about concludes the questions that I have. What a fantastic live stream this has been so far. I've had a lot of great takeaways. I'm sure many of our audience members have as well. Do you guys have any last remarks you want to share with our audience before we conclude the live stream today? Hasib, your thoughts?
I would just echo how Gracie opened, which is, believe in Bitcoin.
Love that. Gracie?
Not just believe in Bitcoin, but believe that the other altcoins will create more value.
All right. Amazing. Thank you both once again so much. That is it from us today. Please be sure to follow BitsGet on X, subscribe to our channel if you're watching there. We got a lot more great goodies coming your way. That is it from us. Take care, guys. We'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.